In 2027, New Jersey will start limiting the number of gasoline powered cars. Light duty trucks and SUVs sold within the state, eventually phasing in a full ban in 2035. New Jersey, Brian.
Yeah.
New Jersey. Home of the mob
Uh, uh,
and
home of
unpleasant things.
my ancestors as well.
Well, there you go. What'd I say? Giant batteries are becoming cheap enough to make developers abandon scores of projects for gas-fired generation worldwide. The long-term economics of gas-fired plants used in Europe and some parts of the United States are changing quickly, according to Reuters. Interviews with more than a dozen power plant developers, project finance bankers, analysts, and consultants. They said some battery operations are already supplying backup power to grids at a price competitive with gas power plants, meaning gas will be used less. That's now, right now. That's not we know where battery prices are going. They're going lower than now. So everything's going to get disrupted. The shift challenges assumptions about long-term gas demand. Natural gas has a smaller role in the energy transition than posited by the big oil companies.
Yeah,
Stay tuned, folks.
because when they do the math for something like this, okay, we're going to build a gas plant. You base it on a certain amount of usage, but as more wind and solar gets added to the grid, you're going to need to use that gas power plant less. And if you use it less, then it's no longer cost effective. If you're not using it at the levels that you expect it to, and these will have a lifespan of, something like 20 years, if you calculated it for a certain amount of usage and it's going to end up being less than that, this does not make sense. And it, of course, relates to our local gas plant that we talked about here, $750 million. They've been building it for a couple of years. It's not even finished yet. And it was clear the direction these things were going in 2 years ago. And it, absolutely not viable by the time that thing opens.
Tim Buckley, director of climate energy finance, told PV Magazine that he estimates PV panels prices will end up dropping by 40% this year and predicts the closure of old technology and subscale solar manufacturing facilities both in China and globally. That is to say, prices are falling so fast in PV panel prices that the old style of panels, those factories will shut down because they won't be able to keep up. And yeah, that's something. He questioned a recent forecast by the International Energy Agency in its recent World Energy Outlook 2023, which claimed that the world's cumulative installed solar capacity could reach 2 terawatts by 2025. And he says, I find the IEA assumption that the Chinese will run their brand new factories just 35% of the time is ludicrous, he added. And as this new capacity is brought online for a full year, I would expect the IEA figures to be undercooked by 50% and more in terms of global annual solar installs.
Yeah, so I think one of the concerns here, and we talked about this when you talked about Jenny Chase's annual tweets about solar panels, one of the issues is as the prices drop, it's one of those things that becomes less desirable to manufacture. So it's going to be a tough go. Some plants will have to close because they can't compete anymore. They've got older panels. So yeah, that's the main issue with all this, I think, is that we need as much solar panel production as possible. So if the prices drop too rapidly, too quickly, it could affect that.
As of October 2023, wind, water, and solar now comprise 48.2% of China's electricity generation nameplate capacity, and solar now exceeds zero point 0.5 terawatts. This is in China, and I'll remind you what nameplate capacity is. Nameplate capacity is the theoretical output registered with authorities for classifying the unit. For instance, I have 3.3 kilowatts of solar panels on my roof.
Yeah.
Does it give me 3.3? No. Maybe for a few minutes, certain times of the year at the peak of the day, noon. So that's what that means. And of course, wind blowing would be for wind turbines, the wind blowing at the highest speed that it can take. So for intermittent power sources such as wind and solar, nameplate power is the source's output under ideal conditions, such as maximum usable wind or high sun on a clear summer day. That's from Mark Jacobson. So, China, almost 50% of its electricity nameplate capacity is now wind, water, and solar. It's quite something, and it's time for a CAS Fast Fact. The average American consumes 127 kilograms of meat each year, compared with 7 kilograms in Nigeria and just 3 kilograms in the Democratic Republic of Congo, according to FAO data. The Eat Lancet Commission recommends people consume no more than 15.7 kilograms of meat per year. That's from Bloomberg. Brian, how much do you eat?
Yeah, it's probably more than that, unfortunately, and I should work on that.
Oh, speaking of Pope Francis, it's been the Pope Francis show here. He's revealed that he has a lung inflammation, but will go later this week to Dubai to address the climate conference. Not that, big oil's going to listen to the Pope. They're
Yeah,
not.
no,
They will listen to the devil, but not the Pope. They've got the religious figures mixed up.
and the Pope had to leave early, so we can't get his comment on that. But
No,
uh,
he's flying.
yeah,
Tesla is launching new supercharger congestion fees at select stations. Brian Stockton, what do you think?
yeah, I think that's fine. As these stations get busier, you've got to figure out ways to kind of maximize the flow of traffic. So, they have data on everything so they can tell when a station's getting crowded. So you add a congestion fee to get people out of there sooner. It kicks in after you hit like 80 or 90%. I think it's going to depend on each specific case. And they're going to start charging you like as much as $1 a minute, I think, to stay past a certain amount. I have been at them where it says, you plug in and it says this station is busy, so we've set your max to 80%, but up till now you've been able to override that and not have any kind of a penalty. Now they're talking about having a penalty because, in certain cases they need to get people out of these
So
stations.
if you want to sit there and charge slowly at over 80% charge,
Yeah.
because you need to get to your destination in Wyoming, say,
Yeah.
you think that that's not going to be an option anymore? They're just going to say 80% and go, or they're going to really charge you money once you hit 80%?
Yeah, and it'll be 80 or 90%. It's maybe going to depend on a case by case basis, but yeah, as much as $1 a minute. Um, it's not very often that I've had to charge to 100% at a supercharger, but I have had to do it a couple of times. And, in those cases, it's because there's a very long distance between me and the next charger. So I think I would have been stuck paying the congestion fee, but, that's around here and none of the stations are particularly crowded. So it's not something I'm going to have to worry about.
The IEA says clean energy yields 6% return on investment, which is not as good as you can imagine on as oil and gas capital, which is returning up to 9% on investment. And that is kind of it's a challenge
It's
because
too bad, but yeah, I mean, it's the economics of things like solar panels. It's a tough business with tight competition, so I imagine that's why.
from LinkedIn, of all places, Goldwind in China, the world's biggest in use offshore wind turbine, which is 16 megawatts, was installed in a record breaking 24 hours, which is fast,
Yeah.
which is a tad faster than it takes to throw up a nuclear reactor, by the way, which is usually in the order of, 18 years these days. Uh, one day to put up this giant reactor in 24 hours. This is a new record they claim on LinkedIn, on the company's LinkedIn page, and they're reducing construction costs and providing clean power faster, they say, by using the methods that they've come up with, which is
Yeah,
fantastic.
on-site costs are going to tend to be the more expensive aspect of this. And like if you get solar panels put on your roof, it's really the labor of the installation of putting it up there, which can take a while. It can take more than a day, I think, often. So, the more we can build these things in factories and install them on location somehow quicker. I don't know how they manage this. That seems crazy to me that they could put
Yeah.
that up in 24 hours, but obviously they're refining their technique.
EV sales in the EU are up 53% in 2023 through October compared to 2022. I was reading a piece this morning, didn't have time to include it in the show, but piece was basically EV sales are doing just fine, thank you,
Yeah.
compared to all the doom and gloom in the media and a lot of what people are talking about. But the actual stats of the yeah, are doing quite well. From the Guardian, coal-powered plants killed at least 460,000 people.
We covered that.
Covered that. After a brief rise in 2022, inflation-adjusted lithium-ion battery prices are falling again, according to the latest battery analysis. According to the late, I'm going to do the whole thing again. After a brief rise in 2022, inflation-adjusted lithium-ion battery prices are falling again. That's according to the latest battery analysis from Bloomberg NEF. Pack costs fell 14% this year, which is the largest decline since 2018. A new $2.5 million hydrogen fast refueling station in Australia can refuel cars in as little as 6 minutes, but only has the capacity to refuel 10 cars a day. And that is from The Driven.
Yeah, that seems like not enough in a day.
No. EV registrations in Europe surpassed diesel for the first time.
That's a big
I
deal. They
wish,
drive a lot of diesel in Europe.
yeah, I wish it happened sooner, but here we are. PV Magazine. New research claims PV outperforms afforestation in combating bugger. PV Magazine. This is from PV Magazine. New research claims PV outperforms afforestation in combating climate change. Scientists from Israel have calculated how long it would take for PV plants and afforestation projects to offset their warming impacts, and PV fields could be 50 times more efficient than afforestation. Is it afforestation or afforestation? Nobody
Yeah.
knows. The point is, afforestation is the establishment of a forest stand of trees in an area where there was no previous tree cover. So you're combating climate change by turning a field of swamp into a forest so that you can suck in carbon. And they're saying a lot of people in the world are wondering if that's going to be part of the solution. And they're saying, no, put up fields of PV solar panels, and that'll be 50 times more efficient than putting up trees in that case. But it's a complicated issue. And finally this week, from the Daily Costs, what do you do with land contaminated with nuclear meltdowns? Brian, what do you do with it? Well, it's possible to use it for clean energy, it turns out. Ukraine is hoping to build a 1 gigawatt wind farm at Chernobyl to power 800,000 homes in Kiev, or what's left of that city. For decades, the 18-mile radius around the power plant, known as the exclusion zone, didn't produce a single watt of energy, becoming a hotbed for dark tourism and mutated animals. You may have seen documentaries or YouTube videos on the subject. In 2018, a 1 megawatt solar farm opened up shop in the exclusion zone, generating energy for some 2,000 homes. But the Ukrainian government isn't stopping there. They are planning a 1 gigawatt wind farm capable of powering, like I said, nearly 1 million homes in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. If the Ukrainian people realize this vision, one made tougher by the ongoing war, of course, Chernobyl would become one of the biggest wind energy projects in Europe, which is a good news story. And you know what? They have the grid connection because there used to be a nuclear power plant there connected to
Yeah.
the grid.
Well, it makes you wonder, why didn't they just build another nuclear power plant? Wouldn't that have been the solution?
No, because
You don't have an answer for that, do you?
you stumped me there because I'm thinking of different things. One, they kind of got burned by the first one. Are they going to want to build another one? I mean,
Oh,
literally
right.
burned.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
The Clean Energy Show.